Don't just watch, be there with Gullivers Sports Travel. Ready for the ultimate cricket experience? Join Ben Stokes and his team down under as they take on Pat Cummins' Aussies next winter. See England's best take on Australia on cricket's biggest stage as England seek to win their first Ashes tour down under in 15 years. Spaces are selling out fast. Don't miss your chance. Visit gulliverstravel.co.uk and book your spot with them today. All the details in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly Podcast. It's our Christmas special. We're in the pub. England are done for the year. Australia have a new opening batter. James Vince is seeing them well in the BBL. Nature is healing. I'm Rana. With us today, Phil Walker as usual, and Kate Mason on for the second time this year.
Huge.
We're recording this, by the way, in the excellent, but not just any pub, the excellent Pavilion End pub in central London, in the shadow of St Paul's Cathedral. We've got our own private room. Big thank you to our friends at Fuller's for organising this. But it's genuinely a cricket-themed pub, and it is great for watching sport. So
yeah, and we've all just come from church as well, haven't we? So
absolutely.
that's very convenient.
Naturally, seeking absolution. The books on the wall.
Gaza?
Spectacular.
Is that Gaza?
Being
Gaza.
Gaza's crept in.
Come on.
Don't know quite. Maybe it's those 3 years at Somerset in the late 90s. Gubby Allen. Monstrous character by all accounts. E.W. Swanson, Trevor Bailey, biography there as well. 100 Years of Cricket. Michael Vaughan, lots of Peterson. So yeah, it's thrumming with cricket. Even the bar staff wear the England 2019 World Cup winning kit,
but they've got
with a little
Fuller's logo instead of the England logo, which is actually very
and
classy.
there's a scorecard instead of the menu, or as the menu. There is also food served.
One for the YouTubers.
So
you got the 1981 Headingley Test scorecard in the menu.
Brilliant.
So,
I reckon I could give you every single one of those.
I know you could. That's part of the
No,
whole.
no,
Please, God.
No.
I have to leave, at some point today.
Yeah, come on, let's move on.
But I am very honoured to be a part of your Christmas special, and I appreciate that it must have taken a lot for you guys to accept me back on the pod after my after me not turning up with this sniffle, a pretty serious sniffle, I have to say, last time around. So thank you, thank you, and sorry, Wisden listeners. I love you all.
The thing is, because we had already announced you were coming on before that 11th hour, and I reckon people might have thought she's got a bit too big for her boots and she can't be bothered to play with the little people anymore. Well, Christmas time, 72 hours after you've folded up with the Test series, and here you are.
Here I am.
Here you are.
And also, crucially, this was Kate's idea to do it in a pub. So me and Phil are very grateful.
I hope it works and that you can hear everything. But actually, just like lovely pub noise is the sort of ASMR stuff that people want, isn't it? Exactly. So even if they can't hear our brilliant insights.
on ASMR, Fox Cricket posted a 4-hour YouTube video of it just raining at Brisbane. And put the whole 4 hours on YouTube.
As in consciously doing that?
Consciously.
It's
they clicked up.
That's class.
That's modern day content for you.
That is class.
That's what we've got to compete against in the new year.
Better move
just
the
very
conversation
briefly,
on.
any cricketing New Year's resolutions for either of you two? We haven't planned this.
Oh, you're gonna love this. So tomorrow is December the 21st. And I'm meeting up with Irish cricket writer Nathan Johns.
Lovely.
We're going to go for a coffee, and he lives quite close to me in South London.
Yes.
And I said, mental idea, feel free to shit on this. Should we go for a net? We're going for a net in Brockwell Park tomorrow on December 21st, which I'm buzzing. I'm absolutely buzzing for.
That's beautiful.
I want to do more. I want to do more winter netting. Basically, that's my resolution for 2025.
I've actually netted in Brockwell Park, I think. It's quite a little on the muddy side, I think. If we're in the same part of the...
But it's
which
crucially public. It's crucially public.
Yeah.
So you just rock up.
wander in and out.
And I don't think it's to be overly competitive getting a spot.
I love it.
We had an early January net last year.
But outdoors. Did we?
Yeah, we did, yeah. You came over to Sydenham.
That was April 2 years ago. But
fine. All right. It's a wreck of a place now, by the way. Yeah? The ECB, they've got to pull their fingers out. Yeah, it's a wreck.
Send a message.
Do you have any resolutions for 2025, Phil?
Brevity.
That was good. That was actually quite funny.
Yeah.
My cricket resolution, I think, is to play for my cricket team because I mean, I'm not complaining. I was very lucky this year to like do the Olympics and be on telly a lot. But there was not a single weekend that I could have played cricket this whole year that I was able to go and play for my team. So I'm not saying I'm going to do less work. I wouldn't do as much work as anybody wants to provide. If you're listening and you want to give me some work to do, I'll be there.
What do you offer on the pitch?
I just want to go and play for Stokey. They're like, they're quality side.
If you could compare your traits to a modern English cricketer, male or female?
My traits?
Yeah, your traits. Your characteristics as a cricketer. I've never seen you play, you see.
My characteristics, I mean, I lack almost all skills.
That's not narrowing it down.
I think I could probably take Zach Crawley's place as an opener.
So you're a shot making opener.
Yes.
Right, you just stand tall and play through the line, and to hell with the consequences.
Correct.
Interesting. Do you know what? First time I met you, I thought that.
Right, let's crack on. We've got one bit of newsy stuff this week. So breaking news this morning that Australia have axed makeshift opener Nathan McSweeney for the final 2 tests of the series against India. In his place, they have sensationally called up the 19-year-old Sam Constas. Bob on the Patreon chat says the current England setup would never pick a guy out of position to open, then drop him after 3 goes. Oh, wait. I feel this does feel quite England, picking a guy out of position and then basically picking a child.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked because it's been as difficult as it gets, right? Going out to face Bumrah and co. Apparently, I think I saw a Ben Jones CricViz tweet that essentially the number of deliveries that were threatening deliveries across his first 3 test matches is as percentage-wise as high as any other period since data began. So he's been thrown to the wolves. He's done okay, right? He played okay in the second test match. And now they've chucked him. The ruthlessness is an echo of the Australia of old. The thing about this kid is that he is so the talk of the town in Australia. And they've got an eye on the theatre of it, I think, as well. But if you're this kid, McSweeney, I hope that they've had a quiet word with him and said, look, you are absolutely a part of our plans, but we see you more in the long term as a middle order player. Thanks for what you've done. You've really helped us out of a hole here. The boy Constas is going to be a superstar. You're going to be a part of our squad. You hope that message has been conveyed to him because he'll be feeling pretty cranky and shocked. I mean, I was absolutely staggered by the decision. What have they said? They would have made a statement regarding it.
Well,
right?
It's not guaranteed that he plays because they've still got Inglis in as a spare bat. But I wonder more generally though.
But he is out of the squad. McSweeney's out of the squad.
Yeah, McSweeney's out of the
Amazing.
squad. Yeah. I do wonder more generally though, Kate. The England, a month on from sensationally picking Bethel, who'd barely done anything.
Bethel,
in Red
he's like
Bull
an
cricket.
old timer.
I know,
now,
exactly. Somebody said on the Patreon this week, he can't see. He basically says something like, "It's implausible or it doesn't make sense to drop Bethel for both Pope and Crawley." And imagine saying that 1 month ago. England really took a big punt with Bethel, who's very young, inexperienced. And Australia doing something similar with Constas. Constas is 2 years younger than Bethel. It almost feels like it's not that risky from a selections point of view because they're younger. You're saying it's a longer term thing. There's less expectation. If Bethel had a quiet series against New Zealand, the knives wouldn't have been out in the same way as if it would have been if it was a 28-year-old, I think.
I think that's a fair assessment of it. I mean, this youngster Constas, he could obviously debut in front of 90,000 people at the MCG, which just like blows my mind. And it was the same. It's not quite the same, I guess, doing what Bethel did in New Zealand. Do you think that's true about people? Yeah, I suppose it is true, isn't it? About people being maybe a tiny bit more chilled. I guess the thing they don't feel chilled about is the context of it all. Like if he had been crap, what would that have said about the thought process? And I don't know about you guys, but me as a sort of person who lacks performance psychology in the context of sport, the idea
don't
of
know what you're looking at us.
I feel like That was always my downfall on the squash court. Like, you could quite easily psych me out, even if I was 2-0 up, for example. Like, shades of my football team, perhaps, in the way I play sports.
My dad once said to me, "You can fuck it up from anywhere, can't you, Phil?" And he said it lovingly.
That's the thing.
He said it lovingly.
So for this, whenever I try to contextualize the idea of being Jacob Bethel and going in there, and I just imagine crumpling like a sad bag of nerves. And I kept asking, when we were talking with the guys about it on the coverage, I just kept asking, is he not going to be absolutely shitting himself, or TV friendly words? And I guess that's the point, isn't it? You're that kind of like elite player, and the idea is your elite mentality is the same whether you're playing test cricket in front of everybody or just with your mates, unfortunately.
Yeah. If you look at England historically, there's the perception of England as being fusty and conservative. But when they have historically identified a young player, and we were saying this actually a few weeks ago, when they have identified a young player, they have blooded him in. And Gower would have not been much older than Bethel in 78. Gatting was in the side in the same time without even a first-class 100. Your man, Sir Alistair, and Finney calls him Sir Alistair without irony on TV, I think it's amazing.
Disclaimer alert, Sir Alistair is not my man.
Sorry. Yes, your working colleague, Sir Alistair. He was 21. He was playing a Lions tour in West Indies, and a week later he's making 100 on his debut. When you've got the goods, then you do get a go in English cricket. The issue around Bethel, I think, was the extremes of it, but also where he was.
Why is it happening? Why is it happening? This is a cock-up. You're just disguising a cock-up as an opportunity.
But looking at it now, not necessarily being wise after the event up to a point, but also I was for it, and we had a chat about it, the three of us, in the build-up to the series. The fact is, now they know so much more about him than if he'd batted at 6 or 7 and he'd made the same number of runs. They now know that package is a more complete package than they could have ever known if they'd bedded him in the middle order and protected him with some top quality players around him. So now the experiment has really borne fruit, and he is a very, very special thing. The other thing to add about it, I suppose, is that these players, they are used to being coveted by franchise teams. Now, Constas doesn't have a franchise gig yet, but Bethel is already earning £250,000, I think, or maybe dollars, in his first IPL gig, which begins in about 10 weeks.
That's a good point.
So they needed to get hold of him, get him by the scruff of the neck and say, right, you're a test match player first and foremost, but you are going to be exposed to 1 billion plus people around the world watching your every move in about 3 months' time. So it doesn't feel like that big a jump. It doesn't feel like this cosmic shift to have given him the role at first drop when you think that he's going to be an IPL superstar in a few months' time. The game just moves on a lot quicker, and for these young kids, it opens itself up a lot more than it used to. Constas is the latest one, and look, for all that's harsh on this kid, McSweeney, who I keep wanting to call Morgan McSweeney, he's the Labour spin doctor.
He's not really a kid, though, is he?
Constas?
No, the other one.
McSweeney, no, he's not.
He's not.
No, yeah. The thing is, I'm old, so
Phil
I call them all
called
kids.
a 32-year-old a kid last
Brilliant.
week.
Okay, my mistake. Sorry, carry on.
Babyface 32.
The young man, Jimmy Anderson. Yes, continue.
Yeah.
So does your New Year resolution start from January the 1st?
Well, how could it begin 10 days beforehand? How would that work?
I don't know. Sometimes people like to get ahead.
Where are you
Don't
going
goad
to
me.
stand up?
Don't goad me.
Excellent.
Right, so on today's pod, we've got some moments of the year from listeners, and we've also got our own awards of the year too. So we've got our own awards. We've got favourite player, favourite match, favourite innings, sort of. That wasn't on my list, but Phil came up with.
Phil's got 3 he wants to talk about, 3. Unsurprisingly, given he chose 6 players for his player of the year.
5
players. Sorry, Phil. Sorry.
Then we have biggest gripe, and then we have the Bazball moment of the year. Who wants to go first on favourite player?
I have no gripes with cricket because I just love it. So, I thought that was a very unkind one. Are we doing player first?
Favourite player first, yeah.
Have you managed to choose 1 of 5, or are you going to do all 5?
I imagine I'll do all 5.
Mr. Brevity. That's weak. I think that's weak.
How many are we allowed? 2?
Yeah.
1.
You can't have two favourite players. What is this? You're not 11.
I did initially think of that we'd only do one each, but feel free to mention your.
It was implicit in the word favourite.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't cry, Phil. My favourite player of 2024 is Jasprit Bumrah. I mean, I don't want to take over. I'm not saying he's, obviously my favourite players are England players, fine. But setting that all aside, he was the person I found the most fascinating to watch over the course of the year. That perfect outswinger he delivered in the T20 World Cup final to Teresa Hendricks. Obviously, I got to watch him on the India tour morning after morning, and I was sort of dazed and confused by it all. But just his bizarre action, the amount of movement that he can get, and the way that batters do absolutely the right thing, like the right thing they should do against him, and it still just sneaks in and catches him out. I just think he is just incredible to watch, and I love the way that he can single-handedly basically win a game of cricket.
Yeah, I felt that this is a year where he went from people genuinely regarding him as one of the best players in the world to the consensus being he is so clearly the best player in the world. And he has, it's right to mention the T20 World Cup final because he's done it in all formats. In Test cricket, his record is totally ridiculous, and he's now got one of the best Test records of any bowler with that many wickets ever. And that's even when you go back to guys who played before the First World War. So yeah, totally extraordinary records this year and over his career.
I think you should be allowed another one as well.
Well, let's go with yours first.
Because I'm not. Because I get asked to do a job and I just turn up and I just deliver. If you want to offer me any, any other gigs.
Philip.
Temba Bavuma. Not played very much, but when he has played, he's been critically important to South Africa, disrupting the world order, really. A year or so ago, South African Test cricket was a sort of byword for the problems of the world game. He was the Test match captain who was kept at home in that infamous winter against New Zealand at the start of this year when they sent a C team out. They got blown away. Well, since he's come back into the side, fit again, because he's been injured for parts of this year. Since he's come back into the side, he's captained 4 games in the last 3 months. They've won 3 of them, drawn the other, and he's made runs everywhere he's gone with the exception of 1 game. The 2 big Test matches against Sri Lanka in the last 6 weeks or so, he's made runs. He's made 70, 113, 78 and 66 in 2 must-win games for South Africa, and it's now put them in a position where they are they are comfortably favourites to make that last 2 for the showdown at Lord's in June, I think it is, or maybe May, June. They need to win 1 game against Pakistan out of 2. I think that takes place in January. If they can get that one done.
Boxing Day, I think.
Right, first day, Boxing Day, and then start of Jan. Okay. If they can get that done, if they just pick 1 win up, and they're playing well, and they look like a unified team, they've got, as ever, a constant conveyor belt of good players coming through. And he, who has been derided and discredited and dismissed and disdained upon for so long, unfairly, he's a fine batter and a very, very fine man. And he has quietly and with great dignity gone about coalescing this team. And he's also making runs, and he's making good runs. And in those games I mentioned, he made an 86 as well against West Indies in August, which underscored that win as well. So he's made big runs in 3 of the 4 games that they've won in the last 4.
And the context around it is that playing in South Africa has been very difficult for batters the last couple of years. So Bavuma, of guys in the last 2 or 3 years, his average is up there with the best of all players who played in South Africa.
Yeah, and look, there have been players, I'm not going to mention, who have had obviously much more significant aggregates across the year. But come June, if they can get this thing over the line, then he walks out at Lord's as the captain of South Africa, a black township dwelling Cape Townian captain who might who will therefore be a week away from lifting their first world title as a men's team, and that would be spectacular. And it's about time they put a bit of respect on the kid's name. And I've called him a kid.
And he's
I have.
34, I think. Your pick is quite similar to mine. So mine is Kamindu Mendis, the Sri Lankan player. So Joe Harmon on our Patreon in an upcoming episode, he interviewed Graham Smith about his own career, but also his role in administration in Cricket South Africa. And 2 years ago, as you say about Bavuma, South African cricket was really, really struggling financially. On the pitch as well, it was really struggling. Men's and women's teams were underperforming. And they've had a really interesting renaissance over the last 2 years. Off the field, they've set up the SA20, that is one of the best T20 competitions in the world. The women's side got to 2 World Cup finals in a space of 2 years. And the men's side might get to a World Test Championship final. And Smith described South Africa as like the swing state of international cricket, in that if South Africa are doing well, cricket is probably doing quite well. And if South Africa is doing badly, cricket's probably doing quite badly. And I think the exact same thing can be applied to Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka, so when I started watching cricket, Sri Lanka were just a really big team and really good, and were for quite a long time from when they win the World Cup in 96. But since about 2015, they have broadly been quite disappointing. The odd good moment, but broadly disappointing. Haven't really challenged in World Cups. Their test side hasn't really challenged the best sides in the world, away from home in particular. And they've had really talented young players come through, but guys who tend to do really well in home conditions. So when Kamindu Mendis comes to England this summer, I've seen the numbers and he averages 60, 70, maybe even more. But I was sort of like internally, but how good would he be everywhere? Because that's the test you have for all young players who come through. And he scores that 100 in the second test match. And it's absolutely class. And he's 25 years old. And I thought, this is so good for the game. If Sri Lanka genuinely have someone who could be a world beater at number 4 or 5 for the next 10 years, that just makes for a much healthier world game. And I think we'll get into our favourite moments of the year. Actually, I'll skip ahead. For me, it's been the last couple of months when we've had all this test cricket on with context. And you've had a race for the World Test Championship final. People are checking the scores in test matches, not involving the teams that they support, because that has influence on their own team's fortunes. And Sri Lanka doing quite well has been a big part of it. South Africa doing very well has been a big part of it. New Zealand beating India has been a big part of it. And it's felt that this has been probably the first good year for test cricket outside just the big three in a few years, and it was welcome, I think. Moving on, favorite matches of the year. Kate, do you want to go first? Favorite match, rather, one match.
Favorite single match. Teacher's pet, this whole thing again. Phil.
It's all right. I've streamlined.
I have some serious cricket answers for most of your other questions, but I think honestly, for me, my favourite match this year was the first test between New Zealand and England, because it was the first test win that I got to do on TNT Sports.
Really? That's lovely. Let's bring it back.
Really?
Well, because the first test of the India series, for example, was not actually produced. Like, it wasn't actually in a studio.
That was it.
So
then
we
went
then
to
just
Stockholm.
And we went to Stockholm and we sat there and we watched England being, broadly speaking, not great. And obviously there was just it was fun to watch. It was a fun test to watch. You know, Harry Brook, like the way that guy bats, and watching him put 171 on the board and just look like he could do it in any way you fancy. He could just hit any shot. I know, obviously, New Zealand dropped a lot of catches. This is not in doubt. And if you look in the context of the whole series, you know, actually, if they hadn't been so crap in the field in that first one, probably they would have gone on and won the whole thing and blah blah blah. Everyone's having a difficult conversation, but I bloody love watching people drop catches.
Exactly.
It's brilliant and fun, and it's amusing. Oh, sorry, with respect, New Zealand, but to see someone then go on and deliver, which you kind of think he's going to, the second catch that's missed. So yeah, that was really fun, and it was just a nice experience to come in and to feel like, okay, we're going to have built on the previous day. This is going to be an enjoyable time.
Thinking back, 5th test from Stockholm, which would have been your 4th.
That was dark.
Yeah, cripes. Thinking about that now.
It would have been late February, early March as well.
Yeah, the snow was sort of slightly, retreating on the fields of Stockholm. But actually, that was in some ways worse when you were going on your enforced 45 minutes of sunlight walk that you got between coming off air and then trying to go to bed, because it meant that I obviously didn't have any like Stockholm suitable outfits. So I was just sort of slithering around. Like everyone in Stockholm, as we've talked about, is like beautiful. So you're just walking around looking like a sort of jaded slug slithering onto the floor and knocking yourself out and then trying to get home to bed for 5 p.m. Yeah, it was
seeing England roll for 120. It is a form of Stockholm syndrome, isn't it? It really is.
Yes. Phil, your favourite match?
Bangalore, India, New Zealand.
Genuinely, which one was that? Was that the first one?
First one in mid-October.
Yeah.
So New Zealand go out there with a puncher's chance. Rohit Sharma, coin goes up. Rohit Sharma says, all right, we'll have a bat, please. They lose a bit of time to rain, and then they have a bat, and they're bowled out for 46. That happens quite quickly. We're watching England elsewhere, I think in Multan at the time, and Atherton's on commentary. And he looks over at the scorecard and says, I see India have been bowled out for 46. Welcome to the club, lads. And I thought that was very nice. But it was simultaneously, it was a last hurrah for Tim Southey, who was unplayable, and it was a first hurrah for Will O'Rourke, who was also unplayable, but for different reasons. They both took 5 and 4. Bowled India out for 46. And then my man, Rachin Ravindra, who I'm very, very fond of, and who since I've anointed him as one of the Fab Four, hasn't scored a run, obviously. Help me out here, mate, please. But anyway, he strums 134 of the most beautiful runs you're going to see. I watched a lot of that live. New Zealand get a lead of loads, and yet then India pile on 460 odd of their own. And at one point, it looks like India might pull out the most obscene fight back you've ever seen. As it is, they actually fall away in the final half of their innings. I'm just bringing it up now. They were 4 for 433 at one point. And at that point, you're thinking, if they set New Zealand 200 plus, then, you'd fancy India on a turner towards the end of the game. As it was, they were bundled in the end for 462, and New Zealand got it done, chased 110 down to win by 8 wickets. But that in itself, you'd assume would have then followed with a reversion to the mean, and India would have done what they did, what they tend to do, what they always do, except for this one time. And when you talk about the context of Test cricket and its strange and beguiling few months that we've just had, that really kicked the door down, I think. And then they went and won legitimately second Test match and legitimately third Test match. Probably the greatest, certainly of the modern era, I think, the greatest away series heist of our time. And it goes into the top 10 in history, legitimately, and that's not recency bias. So that began the story. That was the catalyst to what you allude to. And that game had everything that you're looking for. All it lacked was an extra 70 runs for India, and then it would have been a real arse-nipper of a chase, and it could have gone either way. But yeah, an amazing game of cricket. Some amazing emergencies as well from players, again, at that sort of second-tier level. Will O'Rourke and Ravindra, you can hang a team on those kinds of talents for the next few years. It's good for the game, and it was amazing for that series.
I'm going... It doesn't really feel like it was this year, but Shamar Joseph at the Gabba, West Indies beating Australia. I think everyone would have picked that if they knew it was this year. But it was this year in January. And it was extraordinary, given West Indies' recent record, Australia's recent record, basically not losing to anyone at home other than India in the last decade or so. Written off quite rudely in some sections of the Australian press and quite dismissively. And you had your mate Brian on commentary crying as the winning moment happened, and Laura, it was, obviously this was before all the book stuff, so I'm not just saying this because you're here. Laura's got an interesting figure in that for such a big name, you don't actually see and hear from him that much. So for him, for a guy who doesn't actually do much commentary, sort of the face of West Indies cricket for such a long time, to be on commentary for that moment was really, really special.
But also Carl Hooper as well, who was the coach at the time. He was also inconsolable, with tears of relief, really, and hope, and the sense that it's not despair, that there is still something to build upon here. And that probably was the starting point, actually, of this Test cricket's year of behaving strangely.
Yeah, and also I think it was a nice reminder that cricket, even though you have all the data, all the money pumped into academies in India, Australia, and England, that cricket remains a sport that if you have the physical attributes to bowl 90 miles per hour, someone could come from anywhere and be a world beater. And Shamar Joseph, whose story is amazing, we talked about it on the pod before, but had basically not played professional cricket a year and a half before. Ex-tape ball cricketer is getting some of the best players out. He was working as a
doorman or something, wasn't he? Like a bouncer,
Almost an accidental route into professional cricket. Yeah. He's very reliant on people within West Indies cricket properly vouching for him and going out their way to give him an opportunity. So it's an amazing story and an amazing game. It was the same day as when England were doing their nonsense against India in Hyderabad. So that was happening at the same time, and watching it is like, wow, this is so good to watch. I think in general it just has been quite a good year for Test cricket.
That underdog thing, will never get old. And if you look obviously at the World Test Championship now, and West Indies have won two in total, but in that moment, the hope of it and the fact that it was that guy who was doing it. Do you remember as well? He'd done something to his toe, and he had actual blood on his trainers.
I think he had actually broken his toe.
Yeah, broken his toe.
And he's just sprinting across to be with his teammates, and there's coming out. It's just the imagery of it. It's just unbelievable. It's like something out of a play.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, biggest gripes of 2024. Phil, you've got loads, but on this occasion, I do actually want to hear all of them.
Sure, I need to bring them up, though.
Were they all interconnected? I wasn't quite clear. The way Phil writes things on the WhatsApp group, which is beautifully, of course, as we know, he's one of the world's great cricket writers. But you did a sort of dash between, a slash between all of them.
Yeah, so on reflection, it should have been a semicolon. Fair enough. We can argue the toss.
I just meant that it made me feel as though it was all part of one.
It was a
big.
It was a
feeling.
It was a whiskey and ginger wine inspired stream.
Combining those two things together.
Whiskey Mac, the famous Whiskey Mac.
I wasn't familiar with that actually.
You know about Stone's ginger wine, right? You know the green bottle.
Do I?
Yeah, I maybe do. Not. Yeah, Yeah, combining that with a Scotch is a Whiskey Mac.
Okay.
It's a legendary drink. And I was drinking those yesterday.
Interesting. From what time?
Post my set of tennis with Ronnie, and me and Ronnie were in the pub, and
not O'Sullivan. This should be it should genuinely be
no,
clarified.
and he did actually say he wanted a citation because while he studiously refuses to listen to the show, and I understand that most of my friends are the same, they wouldn't want to give an inch, and I get it and I respect it. But some of his friends do, or something like that. So, and so, yeah, there he is. Ronnie and I came up with the following list. Imagine there's semicolons between them. Slow over rates, penalised, mad loads. You say I write well. I'm not sure that's a particularly strong sentence. Slow over rates, penalised, mad loads. I think
loads of slow over rates, mad loads of penalising.
I think what I'm saying...
Madison loads.
I think what I'm saying is that teams are punished and penalised disproportionately for slow over rates in the World Test Championship final, and it skews the table.
So you're in the Stokes camp on this.
I think it's mad that you can lose up to 10 points or something like this.
England basically lost nearly 2 wins worth of points for just the Ashes last year.
Especially when they don't even go to a day 5, let alone.
In a way, it's quick.
Yeah.
Over rates doesn't bloody matter, does it? Getting out of here.
Yeah, I just think it's disproportionate. I'm not saying that the issue is a dud itself.
Yeah, but it is naughty to be. It is.
But the depth of the penalties is totally skewed for me. The graphics for the 100. Remember, semicolon. Graphics for the 100. That kind of the pink and the green stuff. Just about mastered it now. 4 years in. don't think it needs to be presented like that. Don't insult the intelligence of your average cricket fan.
Do you not like this? Sorry to interrupt.
Are you ready for the next one?
There's quite a few I appreciate, so I just thought I'd cut in
Sure.
here. Do you mind the stuff that goes up the side of the screen, or are you concerned about the kind of? Do you want it to be horizontal only? You know, that's how we read. We read horizontally in this part of the world. Or are you into this?
No, the columns on each side, I don't mind so much. It's the colouring of the bowlers and the batters. I still get confused by this, even 4 years. Now I don't, but it took me a long time to. But I also find it just aesthetically an awful colour palette, man. It's just...
Oh, so it's the colours, not the actual format.
A bit of both. Bit of both.
Okay.
It seems like it's not been well conceived. Don't like it.
Your next one is the one I've been waiting for.
TNT betting adverts. Brackets, not your fault. Kate Mason, don't take it personally. How much more?
We don't have special ones, do we? I see the same ones on Sky.
They may well be, but if you watch a lot of TNT... Is it
the one where he's like, I know all about how...
Yeah.
Gaffer for an acca.
So there's two that really, they're the front runners in this kind of hellscape,
is it the
really.
one with Eric Cantona on it?
Yeah, so there's one with this lad...
That is definitely on Sky as well. I'm not taking this as just some sort of personal problem.
So this poor lad, you know, he's overacting. He's acting for his life, bless him. And it's this sort of sub Henry V speech, and it turns out he's just doing it in front of some unimpressed, sort of jaded. Like, they kind of look like sort of like work executives and Eric Cantona, and at least the presence of Eric, one of the great untouchables of our lifetimes, it just about rescues it. But the discordancy is very, very hard for me to stomach. But the worst for me, because of what it says, is the gaffer for an acca, the Ladbrokes one. In fact, there's another one. There's a third one where play football under a fly pass. And
it's the West Way, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
You can go there.
Play
you can
football
go
under the West Way.
Where the football is played on an advert. Nice.
And then you won't leave yourself destitute because of a terrible scarring gambling addiction. And that's the message of it. It'll be all right, lads. Don't worry about it. Let's make a joke out of it. And there's meant to be some kind of message behind it. It makes me want to cry hot, salty tears. And it's that triptych of misery that they keep dropping into your, like poison, like Hamlet's dad dropping poison by his own brother into your ear time after time after time. And when you watch TNT, the cricket's really good. And do you know what? The coverage is really good as well. But these adverts, they take a little bit of my soul with each one, and I find it harder and harder and harder to stomach. Now, people say, just turn the sound off. But then you're scrabbling for your remote.
I'm actually better with the sound off as well.
Scrabbling for your remote at 4 a.m, every over, every 6 deliveries. And yeah, so there was that.
Overs is tricky. It is
brevity.
tough with cricket. It is tricky with the cricket stuff.
Your next one is also about the coverage during the Test series just gone.
The New Zealand roving reporter man, don't know his name, probably a lovely fella whose actual job...
He comes across so well.
He does.
He comes across so well.
His actual job is to interview other people, but invariably it's men. And invariably they're in superhero costumes, and that's considered to be content.
But I find it amazing how short the interviews are.
Yeah,
it's like genuinely like a 20-second interview.
No, I know.
Like that,
and then back to the action, boys. Yeah, it's remarkable. And again, you know, my heart goes out to him. Really does.
So more generally, I thought the coverage was so good this series. Like the commentary in the New Zealand team as well. I like how light-hearted it is.
Right.
And
exactly.
I remember on one of the patrons on a particularly slow day, me and Phil basically went through like absurd moments that happened the last couple of hours of the day. But it's even from the start. So Katie Martin asked David Gower at 10:14 p.m, so 14 minutes into the day's play, do you like Cats the musical? And Gower hates it. And Gower was like properly going all in on Cats the musical. And it's 14 minutes into the day.
It was a stitch up, presumably. Yeah.
But of all people to ask in cricket that question, DIG is right at the top of that list, isn't it? This is a man who walked out of a press conference halfway through an Ashes Test match to go and watch Anything Goes. Just walked out halfway through.
He's a legend.
He is amazing. Half empty grounds in piss poor elitist England.
Oh yes.
They always tell you, well, we're going to charge you £100 a pop because, well, supply and demand, folks. Welcome to hyper-capitalism, English cricket style. Well, turns out the demand is not there, actually, because half of the grounds this summer were, at times, best half full.
It was the worst attendances for an English home summer.
It was alarming.
That I can remember.
That is tragic.
And yeah, it was Lord's, Old Trafford in particular, I think, were the two that stand out.
Make of this what you will. My WhatsApp has crashed halfway through my list. So I now have to try and...
I can tell you what the rest are, if you like.
Yeah, go on then.
No tests in August.
Yeah, bollocks, obviously.
And the Gabba and everything about it.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that one.
Well, it pissed down, right, on the Hinge test match of their 5-test series.
I don't think that's really on them,
Excuse me. The Gabba's an awful place to watch cricket. It's an awful place to go anyway. It's a place of misery and pain. But at least normally you get a game in. This time round, they didn't even get a game in. And by day 5, which again, on paper, there's still a game to play there.
Day 4 as well. I
think there were 44 people in on day 5.
It's not the official numbers, but...
Felt like 44 to me, and I'm going with it. Officially, via this podcast, official figures, 44 people were there.
Person per run.
Yeah.
I've
been at the Gabba 3 times, so this is a personal gripe. Just its existence is a gripe to me.
Okay.
All right?
No, I still don't really get it.
Okay. It's a really, really vicious and hard place to watch cricket.
Vicious?
Yeah. It's aggressive. The fans are particularly aggressive towards everyone there, especially the away team.
Sorry, so the summary is you don't like Australians?
No, not that. Just that particular subspecies in Brisbane.
Don't write in.
They won't be listening. It's fine. I love the rest of Australia. I really genuinely do, and I've had nothing but good times watching England get humiliated everywhere else in Australia. But something about the Gabba that brings me out. Maybe it's my kind of sort of milk toast English approach to everything, but they are strong, they're beefy, they've all got big muscles, they're not overburdened by a sense of humour or nuance, and it flows out of the cricket, which I can just about stomach until it rains for 3 days. So the Gabba is a gripe.
Kate, what's your biggest gripe?
Oh, my gripe is a serious one. Is it? Yeah, I suppose it's serious. I don't want this to come across as some sort of entitled thing about England cricket. I'm just sad, having watched in detail England women play against New Zealand at the start of the year and absolutely destroy them. Delighted as I am for, New Zealand to go on and win the Women's T20 World Cup and Susie Bates and all these people getting their just desserts. I'm not saying that wasn't a nice thing, but of course it was brilliant and it was very enjoyable to watch and they did well in the final. England, of course, got knocked out in the group stages, playing against West Indies. Heather Knight went off injured and it sort of felt like they were lacking in they obviously were lacking in a figurehead, but I feel like there's some sort of problem with the succession planning there, maybe. I mean, she's speaking of youngsters, she's actually only 33, Heather Knight. I had to look that up because I thought it feels like she's been around for absolutely ever. And then, of course, Australia have won 6 out of the last 7 Women's T20 World Cups. They get knocked out in the semis. Thank you very much, South Africa. No bloody point because we're already gone. No sign of England. What are you going to do about it?
This is stupendously myopic stuff, and I like it.
Sorry. It was my gripe, though. I felt like that was a legitimate one. I just felt like... and also, we've obviously just seen England beat South Africa as well. So it's not just because I'm so entitled and I just think England should go forth and, destroy everybody left, right and centre because that is our birthright. I just mean I think there was a massive missed opportunity 100%. Here, and I'm not quite sure why that came about. There's been talk about... Are they fit enough? That came out as well. This figurehead business, whatever it is, sort it out. I would have loved to see us win this summer.
Yeah, and it's completely fair. If you base on form outside of World Cups, England are the second best team in the world after Australia. Australia don't get to the final. This is an enormous opportunity for England, and it's a huge missed opportunity. And that they lose against teams that they are generally better than in World Cups is a pattern. And given their dominance in bilateral cricket, that is an interesting question for England to have to answer going forward. But yeah, That's a good one. I actually couldn't come up with a gripe.
Oh my God. I love cricket too much. I love it and it's perfect. Is that
I definitely don't think cricket is perfect. I definitely don't think cricket is perfect, but I just couldn't come up with one. Couldn't come up on the moment.
What?
It's true, I'm being honest.
I've just spaffed out half a dozen just for your podcast. You can't even summon one.
Is it? He's trying to get the listeners to come after us? Is that it? And then he's
got his eye on his
Nice
legacy.
guy.
He's got his eye on his legacy already.
He's a nice
He's
guy.
only
What
about
have the
12.
listeners got gripes? I mean, I guess they got.
No, we didn't ask for gripes.
Oh,
We asked for positivity.
All right.
Generally.
All right.
And the final thing from us before we go to the listeners.
Yeah.
Bazball moment of the year. Let's start with a bit of negativity from Kate.
Sorry, I'm just like double negative.
I'm interested.
I'm quite a positive person.
I'm interested.
But I think this is really interesting because England had a so-so year, and you could take from it what you want. And yeah, it's interesting that you picked out a couple of moments that were probably more negative than positive.
I might, because fundamentally, I'm a big, I wrote a big thing about after Stokes declared in the Ashes, slightly too early. I wrote a big thing about, I love the declaration and you should too. So I'm fundamentally like a fan of all of this buccaneering behaviour. And maybe I've become
jaded. She's jaded. Welcome to the club.
Maybe I've become influenced by sitting next to Sir Alistair Cook for much of the cricket that I've been watching. And he is not a man who would play a reverse scoop lightly.
No.
Or indeed at all.
Yeah.
Yes. So the third test in Rajkot must have been, when Joe Root got out trying to play the reverse scoop. And in some ways kind of mirrored by the shot that I know you also took quite strong offence to that we saw a few days ago, played by Ollie Pope to get out. The game was gone, blah, blah, blah. But why is he trying to kind of... Whatever he was trying to do, why is he trying to shovel Matt Henry over the wicket, which is never going to work anyway? Yes, Joe Root, of course, England's greatest ever test batsman. Probably he can just play whatever shot he wants, and who someone like me doesn't really have the right to question it. But it was amusing to watch the level of irritation that it caused.
I'd argue that was a turning point for Root.
But sorry, actually, yes, that is my point. That is actually going to be my point. It is negative because I just do think it's a bit silly, but it was possibly exactly what you're going to say. It was a sort of moment of reckoning
trigger point
for Joe Root and for like, does Bazball have flexibility? And we did a whole thing about Duckett managing to leave the ball in maybe the second test, right?
He actually left the ball for once.
Like 5 times. It was 5 times more than he's ever done since he was born. Yeah, that stuff. But he, so I did start to feel like there's some flexibility building into this, all or nothing kind of approach. But then Ollie Pope. I feel like with him, it's a completely different thing. But I guess these two things were tied together in my mind because it's the same kind of shot. And Alistair Cook was amusingly pissed off by both of them.
And he was sincerely so. It wasn't.
He was, because quite often I'm like, oh my God, I'm so annoyed by all this stuff. Right. And he's just like, he tries to chill, right? He tries not to like take it too personally, take it too much to heart, because I think, he's done it all. He's retired now. He needs to live a good life and just like be happy. So he tries not to kind of feel it too deeply. And so quite often he's like, Kate, don't worry about it. But with this one, he was really like, Ollie Pope is fighting for his place here. Like you shouldn't be doing that. You should be trying to play into this.
It's always good to hear this and to see it. And, with these institutions, to see how they react. They react just like all of us at times. I've seen Atherton in the press box when he's got his Times hat on rather than his Sky hat. And you can see him sometimes, head down over his laptop, grumbling and huffing and puffing because England have, gone a certain way. But it's good to know. It's good to know that if you scrape away all of those runs and all of that incredible, illustrious pedigree, then they are just fans, right? In the end, ultimately, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it was very sincere. His reaction, but it also felt like he was like kind of looking out for Ollie Pope. He's saying like, you gotta be better than this. Because
gotta
this
be
is a competitive bit of behaviour that you're doing here. So the Joe Root thing. I mean,
but I agree. I think it was a turning point for Root. Root has admitted that he's not quite got the rhythms of batting 100% right over the last couple of years under Stokes. And from that moment on, he gets 100 in the next Test match, and he then embarks on this amazing run of form. And we saw him at his very, very best for the second half of the year. So I think it was a big moment. And you'd
Being
hope
the player
that it's similar,
he is,
that
yeah.
it's for Pope as well. That he looks back at it as, actually, I didn't need to do that then. Yeah.
Because what I don't like, and a lot of the guys I talk to who've played think don't like this Bazball thing. I know they don't like the term. I have to find different ways of sort of expressing the same thing when I'm. Oh, food!
Thank you very much.
You legend. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks. So Phil's calamari has arrived.
This is class.
Phil, your Bazball moment of the year.
Wait, he's still chewing. Can I just finish my Bazball thing? My rant was, or my thought was just that, like, I think people watching cricket from the outside know what they think Bazball is, whether it's what the people actually playing, what we're watching, think it is. It almost certainly isn't, and there's quite a lot of pushback on that. But I think what it comes to mean for me is this kind of sort of slightly single-minded. We stick with this. We stick together. We don't allow doubt to enter into our minds, into our setup, which has a lot of positives. But I think there's always space for curiosity and inquiry.
And I completely agree. And I also think where that falls down is if someone needs a bit of guidance, if someone doesn't quite get what is required in the there and now, I don't know how hands-on it is when it perhaps needs to be hands-on. And I still have those doubts.
Do you have any examples
in
from this year where you feel players might have been a bit
Phil
exposed?
said, did you have any examples? But he had an olive in his mouth, so I just...
Calamari, actually.
I think that Pope dismissal is probably one. In the India series, is it the second Test match where they're 230 for 2, and then they fall into in an almighty heap very quickly. And I think sometimes if you look at what some of the players say publicly,
Dan Lawrence opening the batting and playing in a certain way across 6 innings, making it next to impossible for him to ever achieve anything.
I think that was different. I think once they picked him, I think that was what Lawrence felt his best chance of success was. Let's be honest, that's the sort of series that the guy whose job he was taking has quite a lot, playing in a similar sort of way. And it was only 5 or 6 innings, so who knows if Lawrence has 10? Does he have a day where he races to 80?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough.
Phil, you got a day where it went very well for England, or 2 days where it went very well for England.
Yes and no. Pakistan get 550 something at Multan, and England in less than 2 days make 810 for 4, and win the game by an innings. But so that is Bazball in excelsis, right? But then what happens is that Pakistan do a madness, do something that's never happened before ever that I'm aware of. They say, right, well, we've got to play this another game here. If we play on the pitch that we've already prepared, the one that we've been curating for the last few weeks, the one sitting next to the first Test wicket, if we play on that one, we're going to get absolutely mullered again. So what we're going to do, we're going to find some various contraptions, and we are going to get to work on this already 5-day-old pitch and play on that again. And after 3 days of that second Test match, the pitch gave way. No, 2 days, 2.5 days, the pitch gave way. And Pakistan won it. And then they won it again. And they took that series. So Bazball conspired to produce something extraordinary. And then it compelled Pakistan to do something just as extraordinary and audacious. And funnily enough, they went ahead and won it. So Bazball simultaneously giving and taking all at once, being audacious, but compelling audacity in the opponent. And that to me is kind of the essence of Bazball. It's the ultimate disruptor in a game that distrusts the unconventional and distrusts anyone who approaches it from the left-hand side. And England, who famously only took one direction forever, have suddenly shaken up the whole of the game. And look, there are many, many reasons why you can pick holes in it, but it results in that kind of thinking, that kind of on-field spectacular drive, and then Pakistan having to think on their feet and doing something almost equally audacious themselves.
For me, it's a positive one. It was Gus Atkinson taking 7 wickets on his debut at Lords. You know, it was the Anderson farewell test match. And for me, this year for England was the transitional year. You know, they moved on from a lot of players who'd done a lot of good things for them. And I said it last week, I think, let's see how Australia and India transition in the next couple of years. I think for England to have I reckon a par year, despite undergoing such significant personnel change, is actually quite impressive. And Atkinson was probably, I know that Bethel was probably the more exciting at the end. Cast had a really good tour of New Zealand, but Atkinson was the one who was probably the most consistent of the newbies and did it for longer. And obviously an amazing debut, 7 wickets on Anderson's last test match. It was an amazing way to start, and he pretty much sustained it throughout the year, even if his pace was down at times. So, yeah, I think that was a significant moment. And I think whatever happens next year, we'll look back on 2024 as being the year where England tried to move forward. It might not work, who knows? But
it's been the year of the
something.
bolter, really, for English cricket.
Yeah.
And as you say, Atkinson, Cass, Bethel,
Bashir.
Bashir, you can see a future. Jamie Smith, you can see a future hanging on these players.
Yeah. So that is it for part 1. And in part 2, we'll hear from the listeners on their moments of the year. We're really excited to be partnering with Flashback Cameras on our Wisden Photograph of the Year 2024 competition. Flashback's reusable camera brings a disposable film look into the digital age, making analog photography simple, fun, and sustainable. It has the look, feel, and function of a disposable camera, complete with a viewfinder, winder, bright xenon flash, and only takes 27 photos at a time. But it's digital and connects straight to an app on your phone.
Brilliant.
This year, Flashback are providing cameras to the top 3 amateur photos from the competition. If you haven't submitted your cricket photos yet, you can do so via the link in the description.
Now listen, I meant that sincerely. I genuinely did. I did.
You cheeky bugger.
No, I did.
Don't shout brilliant in the middle of someone's lovely
But I've never heard this one, but this is a new advert, and I'm thinking this is great. I'm a very gullible kind of character.
It does sound great.
That sounds brilliant.
Genuinely sounds great.
Are you about to run out and buy one?
I've got a camera at home that's another brand, and I can absolutely see that this is a brilliant halfway house. It's a really good idea.
It's going straight in the bin. You'll want at home.
I reckon they should send us a couple to try out.
I was being sincere, folks, for the record.
I don't doubt that for a second.
You know when I'm being... You must know by now.
Sort of, yeah.
Kate's still learning, I think.
Anyway,
that was brilliant.
Right, so...
tell us
moments
what they think.
of the year from the listeners. Philip on the Gus Atkinson chat, he says moment of the year has to be it was he says moment of the year has to be Gus Atkinson's ton. That was pretty special. Harry says basically that day where England pull off the Hyderabad heist and West Indies win at the Gabba within hours of each other, that's got to be up there. A beautiful Sunday morning. And also, maybe a little bit of a wild card, but England beating Australia in that ODI at Lords was really good fun.
Right.
The white ball series get bad reputations these days, but it felt like a proper intensity about England's bowling in that game. There was some beautiful 6-hitting too from Livingston. And we actually got quite a few people messaging in about that ODI series. So Seb said, on a similar note to Harry Brooks' ODI 100 against Australia is my moment of the year.
I've got that
Feels
here.
like it was a bit of a catalyst for the winter he's had as well after the frustrating summer that he had.
Totally that unbeaten 100 at Durham, as captain, that was a significant moment in his career, and then he followed up with that sort of mini masterpiece at Lords. Totally agree with that.
James says, this was up there for my moment of the year as well. It has to be Lord Gower transforming into a chicken. That was an extraordinary bit of commentary that he did, again, about 5 a.m, where he just did a chicken impression. Like, totally out of context.
The silliness of David Gower is not recognised enough. There's a fundamentally silly and absurdist kind of character at the heart of that.
Well, so we obviously showed how successful our campaigning can be, Phil. You know, we single-handedly got Joe Root to third in the BBC Sports Personality of the Year award with our campaigning. We launched a campaign on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Root was 4th or 5th according to the bookies in terms of how much of a favourite he was, and he gets third. So I'd like to think that, you know, we've got reach in the show.
Hang on, pause a second. You sincerely thought that Joe Root should win Sports Personality of the Year this year? Given that we're a cricket podcast, I don't think there's anything else we could have said. Well, no, I think you're better than that. I think you exist in a world.
I made the point, well, it's like a Lifetime Achievement Awards, which, as I said, there is I think the problem with Joe Root on that, this is a very boring side. Weird thing is, everyone says all the time, I don't care about Sports Personality of the Year, but they really talk a lot about it. I just think, unfortunately, you have to win something big, or like be in a bit. I think the Lionesses maybe got to the final of and then won it as well, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, I think you have to be in something really like, you know. He's won. I know it's like hard on him being an individual and being great and playing in a team sport, but I don't really know what you can do.
No, I was quite surprised he was nominated, actually. Because I was like, this
it feels
quite
weird.
a normal year.
Yeah. He's very good.
Yeah. But anyway, so my point about campaigning was, I think we need to launch a campaign to get Lord Gower back on English TV during the English summer.
For me, it's TMS. Crying out for it. Couldn't believe that they didn't have a look at him after Sky unceremoniously cut the cord. Ideally, he'd be back on British TV, and I guess it could be a BBC role, but the BBC's TV output is a little bit piecemeal. They don't show much. It's not really their kind of style either. I think TMS would be just the exquisite way for Dave to see out the next few years of what's been quietly an absolutely great broadcasting career. It's brilliant to see him on every winter now, you can guarantee. Because, you know, abroad...
obviously.
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's DIG. It's the notorious DIG that get him in. Yes, what?
Related... I love him, obviously. Related to this point, what do you think is there a cutoff for you, an age cutoff? Or do you think people should just... I don't know how you do it, but people... I quite like to see, you know, 90-year-old cricket reporters wandering around alongside 20-year-old ones.
So the BBC has approached compiling their roster from a sense of progressiveness, right? And moving it away from, if you like, the fusty cliche of previous years, you know, male, pale, stale, and old. And that's to be commended. But if you're talking about sort of true representation and true diversity and true inclusion, then somebody like Gower, posh, white, old, should be a part of that tapestry, right? And I'm not saying that they've avoided him for any kind of spurious reasons, but for me, he would be a beautiful addition to that collective. And he'd bring a little bit of class to the show. that I would love to hear, because I miss him. The point is, I miss him. Of a summer, I miss him.
Yeah.
And I know that he misses it too. And he was a bit shocked and staggered by what happened at Sky. And obviously, he took it with great grace, because that's the bloke.
Only way he knows.
But he's got a lot more to give. And his reading of the game is great. He's been unshackled now to just talk about the game rather than be a presenter, as obviously he was at Sky. The campaign should be TMS. Get him on TMS.
Right. And how much influence do you feel like you have, guys?
Well, now you're here.
I think minimal, I would say, but we can pretend otherwise. The point about Gower's commentary is that I think there's almost like an arms race in analysis in cricket at the moment, and I really like that Gower has a different pace to how he views a day of cricket. I think he views it more holistically than most commentators and commentary teams at the moment. And, you know, the Sky team is brilliant. They're top of what, you know, if you compare it to like what Fox do in Australia, for example, the analysis in the Sky
SMR aside, that's very good.
Yeah. It's such high quality, and you see people from other countries saying that in the comments quite often is like, I wish that our country, our host broadcaster had the quality of what English cricket has in its own home summer. But I would say that Gower has that charm where when it's crap, he can take the piss out of it in a charming way without being mean.
Look, he knows that it's important, but there are other things that are important as well. And that, I think, is critical. It's absolutely critical. I think we've lost a bit of that in sport anyway. We were talking actually about like football coverage and how it's very serious-minded now and everything is the be-all and end-all. And cricket has an element of that as well. There's a sort of stern-faced, po-faced finality to everything. DIG, he understands that there's a whole other world out there. And I like that. More of that, please.
At risk of trying to make this a TNT Sports Party political broadcast, obviously David Gower's on our coverage, but I think I feel like that's a kind of a lightness of touch is kind of what we're trying to do a little bit with it as well.
Exactly.
And old Phil Tufnell's been providing a bit of the... He was very funny.
Yeah.
On, like, especially on the last one where it was all gone and we were all done.
He's a diamond.
Did you catch the bit where he was like, we were on about Ben Stokes like pulling a muscle and he just went, well, my mantra is if you haven't got any muscles, you can't pull.
Sir Alistair's flexing his biceps.
But actually, to the point about David Gower and the kind of age range thing, I think that's really, I find it really nice having a kind of, was he, Cookie and me, we're about the same sort of age, and then he's like, it's nice to have that different that different rage.
That's good as well.
I'm going to text the big man. I'm going to tell him we've done 15 minutes on you, Dave.
Would you recommend listening to the hour 20 behind?
the calamari files.
There's going to be a lot of edits in this, surely.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Dan. What's next? Adam says, my moment of the year is Ben and Yaz's unnervingly natural Charles Tyrwhitt ad reads, particularly lines like, thanks, I'll be sure to check that out. Which I say sincerely. I do always check.
Good deals.
Check out their good deals.
Very
Is that how you pronounce it? Have you had it checked? Yeah.
Well, I hope so. They've sponsored us for a good 3 years now.
Yeah,
so
I know.
I'd like to think that if I was mispronouncing it,
great,
someone would have said something by now. Seb says, Chris Woke's bowling off spin for 4 balls has to be up there.
Lovely.
Against Sri Lanka. That was pretty village. Alex says, Harry Brook taking the new ball at a point late enough into the night in New Zealand for it to be funny rather than frustrating. I agree. That
Do you
was
remember
very
when
funny.
Stokes bowled him at his first change in the Ashes?
Yeah.
Day one.
It's day one of the
Day one at
Ashes.
Edgbaston.
No, so day 2. It was day 2 because England bat. And
Yeah.
And then,
Just brought him on. Stokes. What a guy.
Ethan says, USA beating Pakistan at the T20 World
Oh.
Cup.
Yeah.
Chris says,
Yes.
just generally Pakistan cricket overall, from pitch fans to Jason Gillespie and everything around that and everything in between. He also offers a few other ones. So he says, the sliding doors moment of Jamie Smith going on paternity leave, Jordan Cox breaking his thumb, Ollie Robinson's passport not being renewed, all of that leading to Jacob Bethel debuting, and what a debut that was. That is one of the great recent sliding doors moments. He also says Jimmy's pint chugging at Lord's. Kate, you had views on the
Yeah,
pint
we need to go deep on this. I thought it was magnificent.
Yeah.
I was unsure about how fast. So I imagine that I'm not a big pint chug. I mean, I've done it in my day, in my university days. I have attempted to chug pints, but not very quickly. Although I suppose if you kind of pour it a bit on yourself, then you can like lose some of the liquid and go a bit quicker that way. But I was impressed by Jimmy's, because it was Guinness. I think that's not as easy. And so I timed it because I was right. I mentioned it in something in Metro, and 6 seconds. Now, I thought that was good, but you tell me.
He just thinks it's middling.
It's just par for the course. I don't know what course this is, but like.
So
what's your average? What's an average? Because he's got the pressure as well. I think there's an additional. Yeah. I think he gets 2 seconds leeway or something for being out in front of everybody.
I'm not denying that it's impressive, but what is. I'd be, not moved by, but,
Moved.
but, probably taken aback by would be something around the 2 second mark, I'd say. Yeah,
is that actually possible?
The people who like open their gullets, do you just pour it down?
Are you telling us you know how to do that?
No. I
can go right out there right now.
So I can't do that. So I never ever do that. Even when I was at uni and stuff like that, I would always refuse to do it.
I've got an Ian Rowland story based on that.
I'm
not going to do it. Benidorm, 1996. I know.
But yes, the locals still talk about it.
I didn't ask for it.
I basically think that the Anderson's 6-second time was par.
Par.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would have been an embarrassing length of time?
Anything more than 10 seconds, if you're choosing to do that, is a little bit embarrassing, I think. Just don't do it if you're not very good.
So is he saying that is he peacocking about how good he is at drinking a pint? Is that the point?
He's doing it on the Lord's balcony.
I thought he was kind of I thought he's toasting everybody, and he's saying, "Thank you very much, everybody." What a lovely Guinness.
I suppose there are different ways of toasting.
Please sponsor me now that I no longer have to, I no longer earn money from cricket, and I didn't get picked in the IPL auction.
Yeah,
maybe that's what
it looked to me like an away tour in a shack, Barmy Army sponsored Q&A night, and Jimmy's there.
Gosh.
It just happened to be played out on his final moments.
Oh, I thought it was quite sweet.
I'm not saying it's not that. Hey, I'm not saying it's not that. Anyway.
If you were in an office and a guy was on his last day and he came out and chugged a pint in 6 seconds.
That's the vibe.
Yeah.
That's the vibe.
I don't know what I'd think about that, actually.
Now on reflection.
Exactly. Alex says Tom Hartley getting panned in the first innings in Hyderabad before reminding the world that he really could win England a test match. That was amazing. Fred says Gloucestershire's T20 Blast win, and specifically that photograph of David Lawrence and
please.
James Bracey, which we'll hopefully put up on the YouTube. That was
that
special moment. My moment of the year was your Dennis Amos video.
262. Spain.
This is the one we talked about on the podcast a few weeks ago, where I just reeled off a list of England players, and Phil had to name what their highest score was, and Phil gets 10 out of 10, including Dennis Amos. Doesn't even skip a beat, just says 262. And it got me thinking, are you really good at remembering people's phone numbers? Because you don't hear 077262158, whatever. You just go 0777, Zach Crawley against Pakistan. Cheers, Paul.
I ordered my Christmas turkey from the butcher's down Sydenham High Street a few days ago, and they gave me a ticket, and they said, do you need to record the number when you come pick it up? And it was 267, and I said, no, it's fine. Zach Crawley, Southampton 2020, and the lad, like dreamboat of a kid, like 18, 19-year-old kid, he's a proper star. He just looked at me completely unmoved, and I said, Zach Crawley, Southampton 2020 against Pakistan. Nothing at all.
He probably watched Zach Crawley's performance against New Zealand and thought,
that's it. He put a line for him. That's what it was. And he looked at me and said, well, that was from number 3, and that doesn't really count anyway.
It's amazing how he was able to convey that through a look.
Remarkable, isn't it? Yeah, truly.
And finally, this is from David, long-time listener who's emailed in for moments of the years for quite a few years, actually. He says, my moment of the year, sunny Friday evenings in June, sat on the boundary at my local club, watching my 2 kids enjoy All-Stars cricket. I'm not claiming this is the start of a star-studded career for either of them. To be honest, they may not take it much further, and in fact, my daughter is now showing a worrying preference for football. But thanks to All-Stars, they've had a taste of the game their dad loves, and maybe one day they'll remember that feeling and give it a go again, or give it a watch, or give it a listen. Credit to the ECB and credit to the volunteers in grassroots cricket up and down the country. It's not just about finding the next Stokes or Siver Brunt. It's about giving more kids the chance to say that this amazing sport is a part, even just a small part of their lives. I think that's a very good place
Dave,
to
I think
end.
I might cry.
Thank you so much for
so
sending
lovely.
that in. And thank you for all the other messages we got sent in today. This is the end of this week's podcast. Well done for getting through to the end. Kate, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's
Phil,
okay. Can I just say, also, point of reference, I'm not sure I've been sort of semi-half cut on public media before, and that was just part of the format. I'm just. This is not, a new policy that I'm going to adopt.
You're fine. You're fine.
It has been quite enjoyable.
Was it not
signed that
TNT policy? 8 a.m. Oh,
God, can you imagine? A few shots, get on air, a couple of sharpeners. No, I don't think so. But for this has been absolutely lovely. Thank you so much. What
Pleasure.
a joy to be a part of your Christmas.
And well played this year, yes.
And you too, Phil. But
right.
we've got one more to come this year. This is the Christmas special. We've got an end of year special in between Christmas and New Year's. So we're not done for the year just yet.
Is that more awards?
Well, can I talk about Litton Dassey's 138 against Pakistan in the end of year?
You can do that.
As I was
you can
sworn
do that.
off earlier.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
That's it for today's show.
Keeps on coming.
Cheers.